Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Extreme Ghostbusters episodes 16 through 18. So that's, of course, 16, 17, and 18. I know a lot of people might have, or some people might, however you want to break it down, quite a bit of people had originally seen me do a review for the first 15 episodes of this series. So I want to thank everybody for watching that because really, I really liked Extreme Ghostbusters. It wasn't like a show to just be like, well, I think probably this is gonna be a niche thing, and I think I can get a lot of people to come in here because maybe there's not a lot of people that have reviewed Extreme Ghostbusters. No, I just like this show, and I just started just going in and just wanting to just review the show because I'm like, F it, I like the show, and really, if people want me to go ahead and probably review the real Ghostbusters or anything else after this, cartoon wise for Ghostbusters, I am more than willing to do that. I've always been wanting to get back into Ghostbusters content, especially after me just reviewing things like the Ghostbusters movies and stuff like that, doing that from pure memory for the most point. But yeah, so thank you guys for otherwise watching the first review of this because definitely I wanted to do more. I just didn't there's so much stuff that I have to go into and there's stuff that I forget about, and so but thank you for watching this one. Hopefully you'll watch this more because I would love to continue on reviewing the series. So thank you for that. So going into these episodes, really, it just kind of feels like the first two episodes kind of have the same theme. It kind of feels like they're just kind of going into the same sucking the life out of somebody kind of theme, and then the 18th episode is to really just be one of those future kind of episodes. It just kind of feels like 16 through 18. It kind of feels like there's episodes that they were just kind of going with some kind of gimmicks where they really didn't know what to do. It feels like they were kind of spent with a lot of stuff that they did in the past. Plus, honestly, kind of everything has to have some kind of thing from a movie. Every bit of these things kind of remind me of a movie, or it seems like somebody watched certain other kinds of shows and tried to copy and paste through these episodes. In all actuality, I was these kind of especially episode 18 kind of feels like a episode that I've seen in several other shows that have kind of a two different time zone kind of things. So going into this, let's go into kind of describing these three episodes in a very cliff note fashion. I thought that these episodes didn't feel all that strong, but at least there were some things here and there that felt kind of interesting about them. But if anything, these episodes were probably just pushing me to want to just move on into other episodes, just to find a much stronger episode or find something that felt much more unique from what I'm used to seeing through any other rung of other shows. So with that said, let's talk about these cryptically. So the very first episode is to kind of deal with a water-typed, ghost. They called it a creature. I don't think I ever really truly got, a actual name of said creature. But also, within this, you really have, this taken from an idea of, those old-fashioned, today we are going to look for the Loch Ness monster, kind of things, as if they kind of watched the movie Titanic and they like wanted to come up with like some kind of creature or something like that via that, where like you have a ship that is to deal out this submarine, this small submarine, this yellow small submarine, and eventually there is to be a ghost to be had out of that. Really, that kind of focuses on that episode, and then so the episode after that is to have like a banshee slash siren thing going on, where like this is all kind of tied to opera and how maybe kids don't enjoy opera, but we have this woman who is to just like really just suck people in one way or another to basically suck out their life force to eventually be fed somewhere else, which I'll get to that in spoilers. And so the last episode is to forcibly have like Kylie in time. Like to me, this kind of feels like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, where you have Kylie being forced to go into the future and a future guy named Isaac being forced into the past, where uh, we are to find that there is to be a ghost called Tempest who is to be split between two times, and eventually we have like a Biff kind of moment where future Tempest re-meets up with past Tempest and like kind of tells him what he's supposed to do. So with that said, yeah, that's all that I wanted to get into for teeing up for these episodes. Like, really, a lot of people probably may have never heard of this product before, and so I would suggest going into my very first review, because there's a lot more interesting episodes to pick through of that. But also, if someone had came from that review and then come over here, and it's probably been a while, so I apologize, but I think when I reviewed this originally, I think that this show was maybe on Hulu, but I don't remember because it's such a long time ago. So where would a lot of people be able to see Extreme Ghostbusters now? Well, I've caught these whole three episodes on an app called C Movies, the letter C and then movies, and I watch every three one of these episodes or every one of these episodes all on that app. So if there was something before where I said something different because this was a review that was a while ago, and this is a more current time thing, check out the whole entire series of Extreme Ghostbusters on C Movies. I thoroughly enjoy the series, so I would recommend anybody watching it. And plus, also, this is like the second thing of this, so I hope to watch more. If people are interested, I will continue to watch more. So, let's go into this. Let's go into that spoiler territory of these episodes, and I'll go into a little bit more detail of what had happened to these episodes. So, let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about the time I'm going to spoil this episode. So, anyways, so I hope to get some details, but maybe one. There's probably going to be like not a lot of names of characters that'll probably happen through this review, because from what I could like piece together, like I couldn't find much of names through like stuff when they are to talk. So, anyways, let's get into the very first episode 16. So the very beginning of this, we are to have a like a normal like a ship go and release out a yellow submarine. I guess this is like a research ship, so it's a pretty decent sized ship that puts out this yellow submarine to go through the waters. And it seems that this ship is going through some horrible weather, so the yellow submarine is almost getting kind of quickly called back once they are to go out there. So we have this woman in this yellow submarine who is to easily find the last city of Krobos. Krobos? Weird. So it seems that this woman in this submarine had kind of flown by this one like temple or ruin that unleashed this ghost into her submarine. And so then once this submarine was to surface again, all of a sudden we are to find out that this woman had like the life force sucked out of her, like as if this is some ghost vampire. But it seemed to look like a fish ghost eventually once we actually see this thing, because we have to eventually warm up to eventually see this thing. Like it becomes like a sea creature ghost like thing. So anyways, let's go into uh, the very beginning of this episode. We are to see that Eduardo is doing a paper. And so what he's doing is he's kind of copying and pasting from a lot of different people to finish up this paper. Like he's kind of like grabbing from a bunch of different books and just kind of like saying word for word what they are saying about this. And so they're like, well, plus that's also called plagiarism. Like Eduardo, you're not going to get very far in that paper because eventually you're just going to get a big fat F. So so all the Ghostbusters are to need to go to some research center, and that research center is to lead them to this ship where there is to supposedly be a viral outbreak. And so all of a sudden we have this celebrity who is to be a guy named Rousseau that is to have called the Ghostbusters there and like, oh my god, we're gonna meet a celebrity. This is great. So Russo is to mention that he doesn't believe that there's any viral outbreak here, and that Russo is going to send the Ghostbusters into the ship to go and try to see what they can find. Because he thinks there's something to do with some kind of supernatural presence. So the Ghostbusters are like, okay. So eventually the Ghostbusters are to go and kind of open and close things and check things out. And so all of a sudden we end up opening one section of the ship to all of a sudden have this abyss like water ghost, where you just kind of see this like thing of water that looks like it's like an entity of sorts, which I remember that from the movie Abyss. That's why I said abyss there. But anyways, eventually this leads to have them go further on and to try to like figure out where this watered creature had gone into, or this watered entity had gone into. So this leads eventually to having Eduardo going and like finding this ghost first. He ends up going and finding it by basically being like dragged under the water, and so all of a sudden like this sea creature ghost goes and starts attacking a lot of the Ghostbusters. And so here's where, of course, we have kind of Russo kind of going like, like this thing like seems like a real find. This could get me a ton of money if I kind of keep these Ghostbusters from trapping it. He's kind of tempted to just have this thing like not be trapped, or have this thing like that's what you always get from like the people that all of a sudden are just looking at a ghost as like a money making scheme, and that happens a lot. So Russo is to go on and try to like almost figure out a way to like maybe get this thing released without the Ghostbusters knowing, but eventually the Ghostbusters easily and quickly trap this thing. And so all of a sudden we are to go back to see where the girl was that had gotten the life sucked out of her. and it seems like she is fine again. And evidently that's what happens every single time when they actually trap the ghosts, is that everything just goes away or goes back to normal or whichever. Luckily for a lot of people, I guess, because like that's the thing that I liked about that one like wish episode, where eventually everyone who had wished a horrible thing had turned back to normal again. So lucky for them, right? So uh if anything, like Russo is just kind of like, hey, like, do you think I could like, like keep the ghost, like as a souvenir, I guess, of them being there? And they're like, well, no, like we wouldn't do that ever. And so, but Russo is just like, well, like, could I see like the containment unit of where you guys would keep this ghost? Like as if he's like Walter Peck and he's like, could I please see your storage facility? Like, dude, that didn't work out for Walter Peck. What makes you think that all of a sudden, Russo, you are going to see this containment unit? Oh, wait, because you will. Because Eduardo is stupid. Anyways, still pushing on. So, Egon is to eventually, like, kind of look up this sea creature and mentions that it is a thing that is to suck the life force out of people. And it seems like we're going to have that theme in these two episodes, where it seems like we're going to have like something like that being going on in these first two episodes that I'm going to mention here. But like they try to do it in a roundabout way in the other episode. They try to like say that it's like, oh no, it's not life force, but we'll get to that. So anyways, so Eduardo is to take Russo, kind of sneaking him into the containment unit. And so Slimer is kind of noticing this Russo celebrity. And so he's like, yeah, this guy shouldn't be here. But also, Eduardo is to go and start taking traps and put them into the containment unit. And Russo is to kind of sneak away with the one, like, ghost. So that leads to have Slimer go and tell Egon what had happened. Because when Slimer is to tell, like, Eduardo's like, I don't know what you're saying. So Slimer goes and speaks to Egon, and Egon's like, say what now? Like, Russo did what? So Russo is to be, like, kind of running off with the trap. I think eventually Garrett is to also notice that Francois Russo is to be leaving with said trap. So anything, I think Egon is to kind of research about Francois Russo and find out that like he's not as like rich as he seems, because it seems like he's about to go broke, and that quite possibly this one ghost could bring him millions of dollars and also could be his meal ticket. So eventually Russo is to release this ghost, and so the Ghostbusters are chasing after Russo. Like, we get where like Russo is kind of like dodging cars to try to avoid the Ghostbusters, and so Russo is in desperation, thinking that he can release this ghost. I guess thinking that he can like train it or like keep it in one area, which that doesn't exactly happen because it's a freaking ghost. So the Ghostbusters try and trap this ghost yet again, but it ends up that the ghost ends up going down through some drain. And so Kylie and everybody is to ask, like, well, where does this exactly go? And Russo is just like, well, this is just some drain. And it's like, oh, great. So all of a sudden that leads to like numerous calls from Janine mentioning that there had been numerous people that had been attacked by this creature. Like there was a guy in a shower, there was a bunch of people at this pool, and so on and so forth. And so they're like, oh my god, like this is like really going to be difficult to track this thing. Where the heck are we going to find out where it is? But it seems like Janine mentions that this thing is in like the lower east side, and they're like, well, that's where we are. And so eventually they see like the pool that had been drained of seemingly many of swimmers, and so they all of a sudden like see this one thing where the creature could quite possibly go into this one part that will lead him into a number of certain tunnels that would head out into the ocean. So now like the Ghostbusters are going into some like underground tunnel system to try and like seal off certain sections to where there's only one section of this water tunnel like thing that this monster could head into. And so they are going to eventually like bait someone out to have this monster like suck the life out of them possibly, and then like the Ghostbusters will trap the entity, and then everyone will be fine afterwards. So like they're trying to like draw straws or whatever to pick who's going to be the culprit. And so since Eduardo had technically effed up, and like Eduardo f's up a lot, so Eduardo decides, I'm going to go and jump into the water, and like I am just going to like be the victim of all this. So while that is going on, and while the Ghostbusters are eventually to like wait on like this creature to come back, we see Russo kind of sneak away with the proton pack to try and like stop the other Ghostbusters from eventually obtaining this creature. And so once the Ghostbusters like see the creature, all of a sudden Russo is to try and stop all the Ghostbusters from like obtaining this creature. And so Kylie is to basically just say, well, okay, Russo, you want this creature, you can have him. And so Russo is to try to use his proton pack, but eventually he stumbles and falls over, and he falls in the water to get drained. And so after that is to happen, the Ghostbusters are to decide to go and take this creature and trap it. And so that is when Russo is to be back to his former self. And so we have Eduardo mentioning like about Russo breaking the rules. So really the Ghostbusters are kind of thinking that maybe they should have figured out a way to arrest Russo for what he had done. But like I don't think there isn't any like ghost laws or whatever. But anyways, so Roland is telling Eduardo that it's like, well, if anything, I don't like how you just jumped in there. Because if anything, like we should have gone and voted who had to go out. But if anything, they're also saying that Eduardo was also brave, and so they're going to cut him some slack on that. And so really that's just what ends up happening with that, is just that like Eduardo was stupid but he was also brave, so like hey, like at least he learned his lesson. I guess that all of this is like they technically have rules, but Eduardo did a good thing. So the next episode is to have us go into a nearby opera where evidently the Ghostbusters had been called because quite possibly there could have been an alley cat, which sounds weird. But luckily, like they were like hoping to maybe get some kind of tour to go through the opera. But anyways, so instead of getting a tour, they ended up getting surprised by a banshee, and so they're like, "Oh crap!" So this banshee is wailing and screaming, and I'm sure everybody will love this episode. Just like God, like, so this banshee is to go and shout and destroy pieces to have them fall onto the Ghostbusters. You can kind of see some of the opera house, some of the pieces falling from this building to almost hit some of the Ghostbusters. And so uh and so this Banshee is to actually just get away to eventually talk to her sister, which is this singer named Siren. And so we consistently just have this annoying Banshee who is to consistently say, well, like, uh, I need your, singing, sister. I need you to sing to more people, so I can collect their youth. So Siren is to drain everyone of their youth to give the youth to her older sister, the Banshee. And we're gonna annoyingly have Banshee just be like, well, I'm not young enough. Through this entire episode where she's just like, more singing, more. So it's like, good God, woman. So anyways, we are to push on to go back to the Ghostbusters, who evidently couldn't have caught the Banshee. And so Janine is to bring up this one thing of equipment, and she ended up using the stairs for it. And Egon was like, you could have used the elevator. And Janine is like, well, I wanted to get a good workout because it seems like Janine is wanting to try to lose weight, I guess, for this episode. But I guess she's really just counting the calories or whatever to eventually get a hot fudge sundae at the end of this episode, which I thought was odd. So, but anyways, this equipment was to help both Egon and Roland, who are putting together some kind of thing to be able to focus on the frequency of the Banshee's scream. And so they're like, okay, great. So we have the Ghostbusters who are to eventually go on to find this signal of the Banshee, but that is to also lead to have Roland go to this concert that is to be of the Sirens. So so they are to get scalper tickets, and so there was only one ticket left, and so Roland was forced to go into this concert because if anything, Roland likes opera concerts anyways because he's kind of the unique guy of the group. So we have Roland going into this concert, and so what ends up happening is Roland ends up getting immediately freaking hooked with the siren to the point of him not listening to his walkie when all the other Ghostbusters are called. He just gets so consumed by siren that eventually he becomes this huge fan eventually later in this episode. So Banshee is to try to escape from the back part of this theater, and Garrett is to spot this Banshee. And so eventually the Ghostbusters are to try to go after the Banshee, and bizarrely Siren is to feel the Banshee's pain. And so they end up actually just trapping the Banshee. And so what ends up happening is that the Banshee ends up getting put through the containment unit. And so all of a sudden, the Ghostbusters are to eventually find where the heck Roland is. And bizarrely, Roland is listening to the siren on cassette and or on a walkie or something God, what is the perfect term? Like for example, a current term would probably be an iPod or one of those because that still exists. A little disc thing, whatever. I don't know. It's this show was done a while ago. So any terms of whatever, like a Walkman, like we saw that in Guardians of the Galaxy. So Walkman. So Roland is addicted to this music, and but like just hearing her tapes is not good enough. All of a sudden, like we have the rest of the Ghostbusters, and so Kylie used to have the PKE meter, and she used to put it on the music that is playing through these headphones, and she finds that there is a reading that comes off of it, and so that's kind of odd. So, uh, that leads to forcibly having Roland, who is to kind of sneak away and eventually go and take uh, the Banshee from the containment unit. He's opening up the containment unit to try and get the Banshee out so he can bring the Banshee back to Siren. So, uh, but that also leads a bunch of ghosts that ended up popping out to where the Ghostbusters now have to go and like try to take every single one of these ghosts like and trap them. But here's the problem. Roland was so consumed with the siren music that he didn't bother to like put enough power into the proton packs to to eventually have them be able to easily trap all these ghosts. Like it's kind of like the episode Halloween Door, where the real Ghostbusters episode Halloween Door, where eventually like the Ghostbusters at some point ran out of power in their proton packs. But like that's a severe rare thing that happened in the real Ghostbusters, but like in Extreme Ghostbusters, I guess it kind of happens fairly often that because like they have uh these things where you have to like kind of put into the like the proton gun to power up, I guess, the proton pack at points in time. They have like these like cartridges that gets put into the proton gun, and like I just think that was just kind of like okay, that was just a way for them to like eventually have like the power being goofily try to put a better story out or whatever. But Janine is to eventually go and get this like prototype device that Egon is to mention that like, well, hey, this thing might not work because it's a prototype. So Janine tries to use this prototype device and it kind of sucks the ghost in, but not all the way. But eventually they go on to trap all these ghosts anyways, and so Janine, now having to do all this hard work, is like, I'm gonna get this hot fudge sundae. So Roland is going off with the Banshee because he's bringing this back to Siren, and so of course the Banshee again is asking for Siren's like music so that way Banshee could get some more youth. And so again, like the Banshee's like, well, I'm not young enough, so keep on, like give me more. So Banshee is now forcing Siren to now just randomly go into some, I guess, youth center with a bunch of people all playing basketball, and like there's a big game going on. And so Banshee is to tell Siren to sing, and so that leads uh, to eventually having to eventually having the Ghostbusters appear at this youth center, and so it gets to the point where like the Ghostbusters are trying to like sway Siren to stop doing what she's doing. Eventually, Kylie is to go onto this microphone and tell Siren that the the Banshee's just using her, and she needs to stop this because it's just gonna never end. Like we have it where like the siren is just kind of getting emotional because she knows that the Banshee's just using her. So eventually the Banshee goes and like takes away, or the siren takes away all of Banshee's power, and so the siren is telling Roland that she needs to be trapped along with her sister, and so both of them are to get trapped, and so that kind of resolves everything. Um, and so everyone's youth is to eventually return, and so really at the tail end of this episode we just have Roland, who is now listening to opera again in the Ecto 1, and so they're now just like, well, can we just open back up the ghost trap to hear the Banshee again? Like, God, what goofy lines do they deliver sometimes in this episode? But anyways, so what is the last episode? So the last episode is to all of a sudden have Kylie like doing a journal that, like, one seems like a letter, but then two doesn't seem like a letter. It's weird because Kylie is talking seemingly to her grandmother Rose, but here's the thing. Like, she's talking to her through her journal. Like, I thought that this would be like a Grandma Rose like letter, but like I guess it's just she's just writing this in her journal to talk to Grandma Rose. Like, I guess it's just a coping mechanism or something. So because of course Grandma Rose, if you guys remember the pilot, like Kylie is to consistently want to try to talk with Grandma Rose. So all of a sudden we have Slimer, who is to go and like scare Kylie, and so Kylie is to all of a sudden start to get slime on her journal. So all of a sudden, like Kylie is to just start to just uh like kind of like go around into the office and whatever, to all of a sudden be appearing in some kind of time slip. Like they call it like a time slip, or like an alternate, like Kylie bizarrely gets shoved into a future where bizarrely there is a Tempest ghost that is to be living in this future but also in the past. Isaac is to be taken from the future and brought to the past. And we have past Tempest there. It's very weird. This is a very weird kind of approach to this. So, because they call it a time slip, I think it's like people living in two, like, periods of time. Like, they try to explain it like it's the ghost of Christmas past and future, like, kind of like that, like, within this one episode. So, uh, anyways, so the Ghostbusters in past time are to eventually go to where this Isaac character is, and all of a sudden try to notice that there is a Tempest ghost. And so they go and they try to trap it, but weirdly enough, this Tempest ghost will not allow itself to be trapped. Eventually, he comes right back out of this trap because I guess you need to trap the Tempest ghost into, like, you need to reconnect the two pieces of this Tempest ghost, smack them together, and trap them all at the same time. Um, so what a weird, goofy thing that we're in now. So, which basically will make this Tempest ghost, when he's split into two different times, seemingly unstoppable. So now the Ghostbusters, since they couldn't trap this ghost, are like, well, who the heck are you? And so this future guy. So this future guy is to mention that he is Isaac, and that there is this ghost that was Tempest, and bizarrely, he had been in the future and he had been throwing a ghost bomb at at Tempest and trying to like defeat him. And so Roland is this like ghost bomb. Like, what the heck is that? And so Isaac is to mention bizarrely because I guess Isaac is just a ruiner of future Ghostbusters. And so Isaac is to mention that Roland is Dr. Roland Jackson, and that Eduardo is some like ghost of the or ghost. Eduardo is some hero from the Ghost Wars. And then so Garrett is like, well, hey, who am I? Like, I should be a very successful person in the future, right? And Isaac is like, yeah, I don't know you at all. Like, Garrett is just like, wow, really? Like, dude, you do know that I wrote a book in. I wrote a book in one of my episodes, right? Like, I did something. So, kind of Eduardo is giving Garrett crap because it's like, oh, like you're just an unknown soldier. Sucks to be you. So, if anything, now they have to like again, like I said, they have to kind of have the past and future Tempest meet together so that way they can trap him all at one time. And so now they have to figure out how they can help the people of the future because they don't have much of any kind of like proton packs. Because the only thing that they have is some kind of prototype of a proton pack, but it's not going to work out that well. So they decide that they're going to put a proton pack in a time capsule. And so Isaac is to eventually tell the Ghostbusters that the way that they can maybe communicate into future is to write in Kylie's journal and hope that she reads it. Like, I'm just like, man, that's really depending on like Kylie eventually reading that book. Like, what if she just did completely is like, no, I'm never gonna read this journal. Like, man, is she like, man, would this story like not work out that well? But all of a sudden, Garrett is to write into the journal, and that is to lead uh, past and future Tempest, because Tempest is now kind of like confused about like why all of his loyal subjects aren't there, like destroying all these people. Why is there so many humans? And so future Tempest is to come in and tell past the Tempest what exactly to do to like basically like create the world that he's always ever wanted, like his empire. And so that leads to eventually past Tempest realizing that the Ghostbusters are going to write into this journal. So future Tempest is to try and stop Kylie from reading the journal. So then it forces Kylie to read the journal. So she ends up finding out that the proton pack is nearby a location called Central Park, because bizarrely in a roundabout way I had to see what that was. So because they end up doing this proton pack called a proton accelerator, which is just kind of this big huge honkin' machine of a proton accelerator. So I don't call it a proton pack because this thing looks very huge. But the proton accelerator thing is a prototype, and it doesn't work out that well. As soon as they try to blast this thing, basically it just explodes, and so everybody has to run away. I think they ended up trying to do that once before in one episode of the Real Ghostbusters, where I think it was the Ragtime Blues episode where, or, like the one where they were doing the whole I think they had done a prototype of a proton pack because like they couldn't get their proton packs easily, so they just built one. And so I think they ended up using a proton pack that eventually like didn't work out that well. And so Egon, I think, was telling Ray that he needs to take the proton pack off for a moment because it's going to explode. And so Ray is like, well, I guess, like, yeah, I'll go and take this off now. So he ends up taking it off. They end up going and ducking in cover, and the proton ends up exploding. So, yeah, I think it was Ray who ends up using the proton pack. And, like, it goes well for a couple bits, but then eventually Ray mentions that there's like, does somebody car alarm on? Like, what is that? But it's the proton pack. And so, yeah, if people remember that episode, like, I don't know why I fully went into it, but I just got into it but let's go back. So, Kylie is to read the journal and make her way to Central Park. So, that leads to eventually past Tempest going and finding the Ghostbusters trying to bury this proton pack in Central Park. And so the young Tempest decides that he's going to try and bury the Ghostbusters so they won't do this time capsule. And so they end up destroying the time capsule. And so what Garrett ends up doing is he ends up just kind of emptying out this garbage bag and like puts the proton in there and burying it like old-fashioned style. And so Roland is to write a different set of instructions. And so Kylie into the future, Kylie is to bizarrely be able to find this note into the ground. I guess lucky for her, right? And so Kylie eventually also finds the pack. And so now Kylie has to know from this note that she needs to go to the firehouse so that way she can take Tempest, push him to where the Ghostbusters are in past time to get the ghosts to go into this trap together. So, so now that Kylie is to find this pack and head her way to the firehouse, now the Ghostbusters who were buried for a moment there are to now scramble to tell Egon that's like, hey, like, I think Tempest is going to head to the containment unit because he's going to try to unleash all of these ghosts out. So, like, this will cause, like, all these ghosts to come out and just, like, annihilate this town. Like, it's basically the Halloween door, like, way of doing things where, like, unleash all these ghosts so that way, like, the Ghostbusters, like, cannot be able to take Tempest out because they'll be dealing with so many other things. Like, the Halloween door, like, I'm making a ton of comparisons to Halloween door, but, like, basically in that one episode, like, that episode does everything. Like, so, like, it's always an easy go-to to just go to the Halloween door. If you've never seen the real Ghostbusters episode, the Halloween door, that's basically like the Halloween special. That's like the best episode. I've seen it hundreds of times, and so I just enjoy coming back to it because there's so many little details out of that one episode that I can just easily go into to help anyone understand anything that goes on here. So, anyways, so Egon and Slimer are now at the containment unit, and so Egon is telling Slimer, hey, like, you need to help me out, try to contain Tempest from getting this containment unit open, because if anything, there's a lot of ghosts in that containment unit that aren't really good friends with you, Slimer, and so maybe you should try to, like, stop this guy from getting into this containment unit the best that you and I can. And so that pushes on to eventually Tempest coming in, and so Egon tries to stop him, like Slimer also tries to stop him, and so now Kylie is back at the firehouse, and so uh, like Tempest is trying to like unleash his troops to try to like stop Kylie from making it, like to defeating him and whichever. Um, but anyways, Tempest is to eventually make it to the firehouse in both times, and so this is to all of a sudden create this time slip yet again. And so now um, Egon is to see Kylie, and so Egon is to tell Kylie, hey, like, push this Tempest where the other Tempest is, so that we can trap him in our time. So Kylie is to appear back with the other Ghostbusters, even though, like, because they're in one cohesive thing now together. So uh so the Ghostbusters in their time and past Ghostbusters go and trap this Tempest because like the two ghosts are connected together, so they trap it as one. And so all of a sudden Isaac is to go back to his future time, and like supposedly the Ghostbusters firehouse is seemingly back to normal in future time. And so all of a sudden Kylie is back in past time to try and scare Slimer to get back at him from the freaking thing that Slimer did to Kylie in the early part of this episode. So Eduardo is to just be like, well, hey, like, if anything, it's great that you're back, but wait a minute, like, you still have the future journal. So, like, if anything, like, we can take this future journal, maybe find, like, future knowledge. And so Kylie takes this future journal, chucks it up in the air, and destroys it. And she's like, no, like, I want to live my future one day at a time. And, like, so eventually that just fizzles out this episode and finishes up. So I'm going to get out of here. I probably spent way too long talking about these episodes, but I enjoy it. So if at the end of the day you aren't interested in this episode, that's completely fine. But in time, I hope you guys will like this and continue to watch them. So if not, then that's perfectly okay. At the end of the day, I'm going to get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.